In this lesson, we're going to look at three more trig relationships that we can use. The first one is sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x is equal to 1. The second relationship we can use is that tangent squared of x plus 1 is equal to secant squared of x. And these all come from one another, by the way. They can be derived. And the third relationship we're going to look at is cotangent squared of x plus 1 equals cosecant squared of x. So given those three trig relationships, we can use those to solve this problem. If cotangent of theta is 2 and cosine of theta is less than 0, find sine and cosine of theta. So we know that cotangent of theta is 2, and the only relationship we know so far involving that is this one. If we get cosecant squared of theta, then we can find sine, and we can use this relationship up top to go ahead and find cosine. So let's first find out what cosecant is equal to. We know that cotangent squared of x is just taking the cotangent of x and squaring it. So since cotangent of theta is 2, we'll square that. So we get 4 plus 1 is equal to the cosecant squared of x. To get cosecant of x alone, we're going to take the square root of both sides. So let's simplify this. So 5 is square root of 5 is equal to the square root of cosecant squared of x. So that means cosecant of x is equal to the square root of 5. So like I said, we can find sine of, I should be saying theta here. Sine of theta is equal to 1 over cosecant of theta, which is 1 over the square root of 5. To rationalize that, we can multiply top and bottom by root 5, and we get root 5 over 5. So sine of theta is root 5 over 5. For our first answer, to find cosine, like I said, we know that sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta equals 1. So if I put in square root of 5 over 5 and square it, add it to cosine squared of theta equals 1. Now we just have to solve for cosine of theta. So square root of 5 squared is 5. 5 squared is 25. So we get 5/25 plus cosine squared of theta is equal to 1. Then I can simplify this to 1/5 plus cosine squared of theta is equal to 1. We'll subtract that from both sides. Cosine squared of theta is equal to 1 minus 1/5, which is going to be 4/5. And then I just have to take the square root of both sides. I get cosine of theta is equal to the square root of 4, which is 2, over the square root of 5. We can rationalize that. We get 2 radical 5 over 5. So there's my answer for cosine. And remember, sine is radical 5 over 5. Now, one last thing I forgot to add is that we do have, when we're taking the square root, I should have mentioned, these can be positive or negative. So if I have taken the square root of cosecant squared of theta, this answer could have been positive or negative root 5. And over here where I'm taking the square root of cosine of squared of theta, my answer could have been plus or minus 2 over root 5. Since we know that cosine theta has to be less than 0, we're going to actually choose the negative answer here, the negative 2 root 5 over 5. And we have cotangent of theta, recall, is equal to cosine of theta over sine of theta. So in order for cotangent of theta to be positive 2, we would need both of these to be negative so that the fraction cancels out and gives me a positive for cosine or cotangent of theta. So that means that my sine also has to be negative, so that when I divide cosine by sine, I'm going to get a positive 2 for cotangent. So go ahead and see if you can apply the logic we just used to uh, figure out the last problem to figure out the value of cosecant and cotangent using those relationships.